Hi, Autumn. How you doing? Thank you so much for your submission here. Let's go ahead and take a look. So you've got your fundamental but need to piece together own paragraphs. Yes, definitely paraphrase, no doubt. Good point. So you've got your life, your work. So you got your biographical information. That's fantastic. Then you have your timeline information. Then as we go down to the sketches, the one thing we don't have is the subhead. So we need to know what the subhead is going to say. Also, when you're sketching for presentation, try to keep your sketches to scale. So in other words, this is 11 by 17. So try to, I mean, this would not translate out to 11 by 17. It's much more narrow. If this was 17, this would only be probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 inches, right? So really try to keep these in proportion to the destination size for your final presentation. Now there's a couple of things else. So we have the name. Now what I want you to do in your sketches is I want you to actually give live sketches. So instead of saying name head, actually sketch her name right in there. Subhead, actually sketch that subhead right in there. Okay. Down here you've got name subhead. Oh, see, you've got some interesting things going on, I think, that are alluding to that kind of molecular structure that she was associated with. And we're seeing that here. This is kind of this molecular structure here. But I think we can really push that further. This one seems to be a little more arbitrary in its presentation. So in other words, I'm not seeing a conceptual tie between these diagonals and these triangles and what the work was for. Conversely, I'm not sure what this is right here. So again, in your presentations, if something's not specifically clear and you haven't addressed it in your writing, feel free to add an arrow right there and add notes so we know what that is. Okay? I think this is really, really super busy. I don't think, if we take a look at this and we think about what we've learned about hierarchy, specifically typographic hierarchy, you can take a lot of those same principles and apply them to visual hierarchy as well. So, for example, if these were all paragraphs, right, they would be all basically, if these were all paragraphs with the exact same size of type and the exact same leading and kerning, there would be no typographic hierarchy here. Why? Because each of these type blocks would be relatively the same size and using the same typographic elements. So the viewer doesn't know where to look first, so they're confronted with this confusing situation of where do I go next? What do I do? And as we know, viewers don't like to be confused. They would rather look away from a concept, a composition, than be confronted with what do I do next? So keep that in mind always, okay? When your viewer gets confused, there's a good chance they're going to move on, and you don't want that as a designer, okay? We want to keep our viewer in our compositions as long as it takes to deliver that message, and perhaps even longer. Okay, so I've got some ideas and I've got some suggestions. So you jump over, this is an important, very, very important presentation. I would like you to read that. Also, in addition to this, read over pages 115 to 120 in the textbook. Don't believe that's part of the required reading for this week, but these cover these strategies for creating dynamic visual verbal combinations and creating and establishing connotative and denotative meaning with those associations and those combinations. So read through these, and I want to show you an example of a wonderful concept development from a previous student. Looking for it. Oh, it's right over here. And this is one of the strongest concepts, and this really shows the concept of visual substitution and simultaneity in a very, very good, succinct, and very articulate way. Let's get back to that presentation. I'll show you what I'm talking about right over here. Martin Luther King Jr. This is called visual substitution. This designer has substituted an equal sign for the E in Luther, which does two things. Number one, it plays the part of the E. Number two, it sends a message. It's a connotative message. And the message is that this equal represents equality. Martin Luther King stood for equality, so there's a strong conceptual tie between this substitution right here and the concept and the whole general idea behind the existence and specifically the laureate, the Nobel laureate accolades bestowed upon Martin Luther King Jr. All right, so in addition to that, this designer has taken that concept and continue it onto the back of the poster using that equal sign as the basis for the timeline. So it's very, very harmonious, excellent piece, as we can see. We can do the same thing. I've got some ideas. I want to run them by you. Let you sleep on it a little bit and think about it. So we've got your sketches, right? And right here, I think you're starting to develop this kind of molecular structure here. I would like you to take that much further. So we have this kind of, we have these requirements for the assignment. There's no imagery allowed on the front, but you are allowed illustrations. And especially if those illustrations are in accord with the typography. So I'm thinking about molecular structure, and I did a Google image search, and we've all seen them. Remember these little models we built in science class? You know, this is basically a model of a molecular structure, right? As how the molecules are bonded together to create these elements. So I'm thinking maybe you could use that somehow in your front cover. I'm sorry, the front of your poster. Somehow you're alluding to it right here. But somehow, if you could just, like, say, you give her name and a subhead, and then maybe just a couple of circles that are connected with those kind of rods. You see what I'm saying? Just to establish like a visual foundation. Then what you can do is just duplicate this model. This, I believe, was the model of penicillin created by the laureate. So that's the model of penicillin. What you can do on the back of the poster is move right to the back of the poster and duplicate that model of penicillin. Okay, and use it for your timeline. So there would be the beginning. There's she is born. Here's her first attribute, second, third, and they're radiating off this molecular model. And I think that would create the conceptual ties that we're looking for. And it would also create a very, very interesting visual tie between the front and the back of the poster, as long as you introduce that sort of molecular concept in the front of the poster. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to play art director here and say, go ahead and do that. I'm saying consider that as an option and maybe start building and springboarding some ideas off that for your conceptual development. Okay. Now, will the poster work without a concept? It will. And we've seen a couple of the examples in class. We've seen that some of these examples don't specifically have this really super strong concept. And I would say that we see that here. There's no really super strong concept here. So it will work. And another option is this, something like this right here. This is building concept off the attributes of the image itself. So this image, this designer elected to take the color scheme, the color palette from the garments Malala is wearing in this image, okay, and use those colors for the background of the poster. And then also, this designer has taken some of these patterns out of the sleeves of the garment and duplicated those patterns for the timeline. So we're really seeing a nice synergy between image and presentation. Okay, and then those little patterns are also repeated on the front where in the M in Malala. So there's a very heavy conceptual tie, all based on what? Attributes from the image itself. Okay, so that is an important thing as well. The other thing I didn't see in your presentation was the image that you plan on using. Did you include an image? No. Oh, you did. You did include an image. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so think about that moving forward. And I'd really like to see some more sketches specifically working on conceptual development, whether it be using attributes from an image or developing some sort of a visual connection between the Nobel laureates' achievements and the presentation of the front and the back of the poster, as I indicated in using that little molecular model in the front of the poster to a lesser degree, and then that full-blown molecular model for the basis of your timeline. Okay, so think about my comments. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I'd like to see you address some of those issues and considerations in your final presentation. All right, great job, Autumn. Thank you.